You shoot me in a dream, you better wake up and apologize.
The Cinik Radio Podcast.
Hi, I'm Chad L. Coleman, Tyrese from The Walking Dead, and Cuddy from The Wire, and you are listening to the Cinik Radio Podcast. Here your host, Cinik.
We live in great times because the internet has given the world a voice, but other than complaining, it seems like they have absolutely nothing to say.
Igrihe.
It's going to be a really good time.
And Ryan.
Batman vs. Superman is objectively better than Infinity War.
IG, did we just forget Kim?
You guys completely suck.
This is the greatest show of all time.
Finally, this one has been circled on my calendar for months now. In a summer full of reboots, remakes, and sequels, we finally get something fresh to sink our minds into. The 9th film written and directed by Quentin Tarantino called Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It follows the main characters, Rick Dalton and his trusty sidekick, Cliff Booth, set to the backdrop of Hollywood in the late 60s in an era of free love, Hollywood's golden years, and the Manson family murders. Quentin Tarantino, Ryan, has repeatedly warned us that he's close to calling it a career as far as writing and directing is concerned for these films. Would it leave an unfillable void in cinema in Hollywood?
I don't know if I would say unfillable. Like, he's been a great director, and I think he's brought something really unique to film that I don't know that anyone will replace it. But at the same time, like, if he never has another movie, there's still Pulp Fiction, there's still True Romance, there's still a lot of great movies that I don't know that we'll miss a lot, that any unmade movies, but it'd be unfortunate because I think he does bring a lot to the table. But yeah, I don't think that we're gonna, if he never films another movie, that we're gonna go to the grave thinking, oh my God, I wish he just made that one more movie.
How about you, IG? Do you think that someone can step up and fill his shoes?
Well, somebody's going to have to be a little bit crazy. Somebody's going to have a real affinity for using the N-word, just playing out every place he can go, and really just have an eye for making something dramatic, because he's taken some things that, quite honestly could have been not all that interesting to watch and made them just absolutely wonderful to watch, and including remakes. I mean, even when he did Jackie Brown, that's old stuff, and he redid it, and it was amazing to watch.
Well, the dialogue is cool, the atmosphere is always hip, and the scenery is always beautiful. Kim, what are your 3 favorite Quentin Tarantino films?
Oh, that's an easy one. Inglourious Bastards, for sure. Django, and I don't know if I can count Grindhouse. It was a double feature, but I really, really love that.
Death Proof was his. The other one was
Robert Rodriguez.
Yeah.
How about you, IG? What's your 3 favorite Quentin Tarantino flicks?
Well, for me, it's going to be Kill Bill Volume 1, not Volume 2. I like Volume 1 much better. I'm with her on Death Proof and The Hateful Eight. I really like The Hateful Eight.
Ryan?
I know it's not directed but written. True Romance, I think, is the best film in his kind of filmography, I guess, or is my favorite. I really did like Hateful Eight. I'd say that would be up there, and then probably a tie between Pulp Fiction and Inglourious Bastards.
Well, he gave us 4, but I'll allow it. Mine's always going to be Pulp Fiction, is always going to be number 1. It revived careers. It was groundbreaking. Hateful Eight's probably going to be number 2 for me. And one of his shortest films, Reservoir Dogs, will probably be number 3. I loved it. I love Steve Buscemi. I love Harvey Keitel. And that movie left an impact on me. And it's still one of the most quotable movies of all time. IG, I know you've said repeatedly that we don't hawk Trek here. Let us not be misunderstood. We love Star Wars. We don't hate Star Trek. But if Tarantino does get and lead a Star Trek film, would you change your tune? Would we cover it?
We might cover it, but I don't know if I'm going to change my tune completely, because I don't know what the hell he's going to do. I mean, are we going to have like long drawn out sequences of Uhura's feet? I mean, what's going to go on with this movie?
Yeah, I don't really know myself. Star Trek is really subjective to what time period we're looking at. I mean, some of the time periods are a lot better than others. Original cast, good. Next Generation, pretty amazing. And the rest I really could do little with nothing out with. Now, the newer seasons I've taken a look at, and I've watched a couple episodes, and I think they're pretty cool, but I don't know how much having Sasha from The Walking Dead lead the cast kind of sways my opinion on it. Ryan, we found out during the movie that Hollywood actually does eat its own. And much like the wrestling world, when you're about to leave the business or the company, they make sure that you lose to every up-and-coming star to raise their stock. Were you surprised that they used the same tactic that they would in the WWE with actors using the older ones like Rick Dalton as the villain to further the careers of the new up-and-coming stars?
Yeah, that was interesting. I did immediately think of the kind of pro wrestling analog when they brought that up. I wasn't aware of it like that, but at the same time, I definitely remember my dad when I was young telling me how people, there are people that actually believe, actors and actresses are who they are in the show or on the screen, and that sometimes people can't divorce the two. So it would make sense in that way that you have some actor who is, a certain type of character that then, is the kind of, is a person to put the newer, younger actors and actresses over. So I definitely got the pro wrestling angle, and I didn't know that was true, and it's kind of really interesting that if that really is the case.
He said during the movie, Kim, 5 years to ascend, 10 years of treading water, and then a quick descent to the bottom. Would you take these type of roles just to stay relevant in Hollywood? That's
tough. You got to figure the time period as well and how things were merging into Technicolor. And yeah, I guess you would kind of have to, especially you've been somebody that's been doing black and white old Westerns and whatnot. And you need to stay relevant with all the new and upcoming things that are on TV. I mean, you kind of have to do what you got to do. And that's all he knew how to do was these particular roles. And I think it was great the way that guy he was talking to, help me out here, guys.
Al Pacino?
His character name.
Marvin Schwartz.
Schwartz, yeah. When he was explaining it to him, like, you could do this, but it's going to basically taint the way that you're perceived in Hollywood. You don't want to just, you're going down a path, and I just thought that was really excellent advice to give somebody who's actually struggling with that particular role. I mean, yeah, you got to do what you got to do, but you got to walk a fine line as well to save your reputation.
Athletes have taught us it's all about your brand anymore, and doing anything counterproductive to your brand to pay the bills may hurt you long term. Rick Dalton, who's a struggling former lead, is played by current megastar Leonardo DiCaprio. And despite him being a womanizer and rumors of entitled behavior on the set, do you feel he's our last true movie star? And will he get a pass for transgressions simply because his movies are always blockbusters?
I don't know if he's going to be our last true movie star. I mean, we always seem to get somebody else. And that's the thing. Somebody's always going to come around who's got just the right level of charisma and is just an amazing actor that's going to take the place. And the things that he's done so far, I think he may get a pass for, but if anything worse comes out, I mean, we've seen some great actors get sent down the rabbit hole for their transgressions. So I'm hoping he's not going too far in some of the things he's doing. But you're absolutely right. Pretty much everything he's done has been just amazing. He is a good actor, and I think he's done smart things about picking most of his roles because he hasn't had any real dogs come out. Most of the things have been really good. I mean, there have been some things that I think are so. Not a big fan of What's Eating Gilbert Grape, but yeah, most of the stuff is pretty good.
Well, yeah, but that was kind of really before he was who he is. I mean, his track record now is very, very good. I mean, he's got a high percentage. If he was a major league hitter, he'd be hitting near 500%, if not higher. I mean, his movies gross no matter what he does. Rick Dalton doesn't seem like a good guy, Ryan, and frankly seems to actually be his worst enemy, drinking, all sorts of self-loathing behavior. But could you sympathize during the movie with his fight to stay relevant?
Yeah, I mean, it works really well. I think you can see, and it's kind of one of the themes in the movie. I think the narcissism and the need for attention that comes with being a star, and that it's cyclical, and no matter how high you get and how big of a star you become, you're going to hit the top of the kind of roller coaster, and then you head downhill. And he's dealing with it, and it still makes a person sympathetic. And it's kind of interesting because you have these people who are larger than life, and they all go through this. And no matter how famous, how rich, how much they've accolades they've gotten, like they go through this, and it's painful. And I think he does a great job job of showing that and making him really a sympathetic character and making us kind of feel for him, even though he doesn't seem like the greatest guy in the world.
Yeah, very few stars stay relevant their whole career. I mean, we have a handful that have stayed at the A-list. Usually it's like he said, you go up and then you kind of stay as relevant as long as you can, and then it's down to the bottom, and next thing you know, you're starring in Lifetime films or begging to get parts on Netflix series. Came at 2 hours and 40 minutes. It's not uncommon for a Tarantino movie to be that long, but did we spend a little bit too much time establishing Dalton as a B-rated TV celebrity?
I definitely think so. I spent a lot of time trying to follow that storyline and trying to pick up on the little innuendos of, the character building arc there. And for it to just, honest to God, like I should have picked up on it sooner. But it didn't click that this had anything to do with the Manson murders or anything like that until almost damn near the very end. I was like, oh, when the girl gets in the car and asks for a ride out to the ranch or whatever, and then me and Matt just looked at each other like, oh, that's where he's going with this. Okay, so yeah, I mean, you spent 2 hours and 18 minutes building up this character and his entire backstory, and then it had nothing to do really with until I don't know, it was kind of all over the place in the second act.
How about you, Ryan? Could we have spent a little less time on set with Dalton?
A lot of this movie was just us kind of being there for the ride. Like I felt like, there were two movies there. There was kind of like us being a passenger, kind of watching kind of a day in the life or a few days in the life of these characters. And then there was the other part dealing with the Manson murders that is kind of waiting to see how these two stories kind of intersect. And it does an interesting job subverting. Again, we'll get to those points later. But at some point, I realized, this isn't a kind of a narrative driven movie like we're used to. And so I was just, and I just kind of like, I'm going to sit back and enjoy the ride. And so I was happy with the whole thing. I think it was a bit long, but it never really felt long. And again, it's one of the things where I could have watched any of the combinations or any of them just do what they were doing, because I think it was really well directed and the performances were so good that I was kind of happy to just kind of sit again and just enjoy the ride.
Overall, I liked it too. However, I think if you take DiCaprio and Pitt out of those roles, I think it becomes a lot less romantic to watch and a lot less fascinating to watch. I knew the movie was going to be long. I have no problem with long movies. I generally like them as long as they fill the time. The Bounty Law was a little bit long and it was a little bit drawn out, and we went back to it maybe one too many times, but overall I did enjoy kind of watching his career. IG, we all need to have a best friend. We all need to have a cohort to carry our load. And we know that all stunt guys are badasses, but Cliff Booth must be the alpha stunt guy of all time, kicking ass, taking names, as well as being a good friend to Rick. But did you believe in their friendship, or do you think he was just protecting his meal ticket?
No, I actually kind of believed it. I thought it was working really well. And I think that despite everything, he believed that he had a friend, because, I mean, anybody that's willing to drive you around, show up at your house early, get themselves up early and do all that stuff. Yeah, maybe there's some meal ticket going on there, but you're not going to go back to their house and fix the antenna and do other things without telling them to go screw themselves once in a while. And he doesn't do any of that. He's just happy to be there and happy to be able to hang out with his friend and do things. So yeah, I believe they're friends. I believe that Cliff especially cared a lot. And it was simply just how Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio are able to just chew up any scene they're in, especially together. They really do have good chemistry together. They work very well.
Now, I'm not saying, Kim, he should have killed her, but after the 30 seconds that we met Cliff's wife, did you understand?
Yeah, I don't think there's an appropriate way for me to answer that, but yes.
Yeah, it was kind of a great Robert Wagner Easter egg there, as his wife Natalie Wood famously and suspiciously died at sea. Ryan, did you pick up on that right away? That Cliff may or may not have killed his wife?
No, I didn't get the connection, but yeah, clearly it was interesting because I was like, I liked him as a character until that point. I was like, oh crap, like, that's hard to like him after. Hard to like him after that, but it's kind of rough. She
was such a nagging bitch on the boat. And I'm sitting there and he's just kind of calm as a clam, about as good as you can be, all things considering. But I mean, I think that's justifiable. to a certain degree, right? And then they spend the entire rest of the movie basically building up that validation that he does have that violence, within him. He's not just a great stuntman or whatever, but great act. He's capable of doing something like that.
It's guys like Cliff that actually scare the shit out of me in real life, because there is that violence under the surface and you can see it. But he's calm as a cucumber until he's pushed. Then once the evil's unleashed, a combination of Ryan George and Ned Flanders for me. When they finally go off the rails, it's not going to be pretty for whoever they're mad at. And I just hope it's not me. IG, not only was Cliff an alleged wife killer, he also wouldn't think twice before he did or said something to put his job and employment in jeopardy. We all have that friend that will give you the shirt off their back, but can't seem to get out of their own way or run their own life or handle things that most people should. How do you handle the Cliffs in your life?
You just got to let them do it. You got to let them just go off the rails, fall into a gutter, and be there when they come back out. You can't tell them anything. You can't push them in a direction because you might become the next target. You just got to be there, offer your support, tell them you love them, and send them on their way. I know a few Cliffs, and I've watched them just blow up and lose damn near everything that they've gained and fall off the planet for months at a time, and then all of a sudden show back up and they've got a new job and a new car, and I'm like, how'd you make that happen? And it's an amazing story. So they're always a good person to know because they've got the best stories of the craziest shit that can happen to a person, and they not have holes in their head. So yeah, you just got to let them go. You got to let them do their thing and just be supportive.
I agree. I mean, after you lose it all, there's nothing left to do but start a podcast and just throw your opinions around to the masses. And then hopefully things will turn around for you, sheerly by luck. Cliff and Rick's friendship in the movie was inspired by a friendship of Burt Reynolds and a stuntman by the name of Hal Needleham. Not only was he Burt's stuntman, but he also went on to direct Burt and direct him in Smokey and the Bandit. So I thought that was kind of a neat side story that Quentin used that as inspiration. One of the scenes I thought was simply amazing, Ryan, was Cliff's showdown with Bruce Lee. We all know Quentin's a cinema buff. We're cinema buffs. Do you think this was just a cool nod to the time period, or was this definitely shots fired at Bruce Lee?
Yeah, that was a weird scene because I feel like he does have an affinity for, old Hollywood. He has affinity for old kung fu movies, but it was like he just made Bruce Lee look like an ass. But the actor who played him was hilarious and great and did a great impression. I couldn't figure that out. I had a hard time with that because it's like, didn't speak well of Bruce Lee as a person. And it made him look pretty bad. And granted, like on my fitness podcast, we did a whole episode about the kind of myth of Bruce Lee and that he probably wasn't as great a fighter as people talked about. But still, it's interesting to see him kind of portrayed like that in a movie. Yeah, it was weird, and I'm not sure whether it was like kind of an homage to him or just like he was bullshit.
Yeah, I kind of like that. The guy in the role was absolutely perfect. I caught the little shade that he threw at Chuck Norris during the dialogue. I thought that was pretty funny as well. And overall, I thought the scene was one of the most amazing things that's ever happened in a Tarantino film. What do you think, IG?
I think it was great, and I think that it is absolutely shots fired at Bruce Lee. And here's why. I've watched all the Bruce Lee movies, and especially I've watched all of the biography type movies about Bruce Lee. And the acting of this man as Bruce Lee is not far off in the way that you'd hear Bruce Lee talking to his students and to other people. And, with the exception of my hands are registered as deadly weapons, which anybody that says that just needs to have their ass kicked. That's just the stupidest thing anybody can come up with. And Cliff hit him with the perfect line with, anybody that kills anybody accidentally goes to jail. It's called manslaughter. And I thought that was glorious and just hilarious because that's absolutely true. But it's one of those things where in a controlled environment where everybody's doing the same kind of thing, your kung fu stuff might work. But when you're up against Cliff, wife killing murderous badass, it's not going to work because this is going to be more of a street fight. And that's where Bruce Lee kind of got messed up. So that's where the origin of MMA came from, I'm pretty sure, is Cliff and Bruce Lee back behind the Green Hornets lot.
Well, if Dana White could make it happen, he most definitely would. Kim, you can't have a Manson family-related movie without having Sharon Tate. And she was played whimsically and very likably by Margot Robbie. The more you saw her on screen, even though I felt she was a hint underdeveloped, did the dread kind of build for you? At the more likable she became, history tells you something really bad is headed her way.
Especially with a Quentin Tarantino film, you gotta not get too overly attached to any specific character, because the movie could take just a sharp turn at any time. Before you know it, you've got a machine gun leg and you're, just killing off everybody. I really liked her in this role. I thought she was really freaking good at it, and I wish that they would have spent a little bit more time or given her some more speaking lines. In fact, I was talking about this today with one of our neighbors who just went and saw it. They kind of hinted around to the same thing, is that she's very good at what she does, but even though she didn't have a whole lot of speaking lines, she still had a presence, and her ability to act with body language and facial expressions and things like that, I thought was really, really well done. She's come a really long way from, say, Suicide Squad. It was nice to see.
It just bothered me. The whole thing bothered me, watching her and finding her likable right away, all the way from picking up the hitchhiker and being so sweet to her when they got out of the car, to the taking the bullshit of the movie usher and actually standing next to the poster to take the picture so they would know who she is in the movie. I mean, she just seemed overall like just a sweet person. You run into those every once in a while, and people say that about me often. They're just a sunshine to be around. They make everything better. And I don't say that myself, but people do say that about me, and that makes me happy. And I wouldn't want to be murdered by the Manson family either. So I kind of worried for Sharon Tate as the movie went on. I just wish we could have spent less time on Bounty Law and more time getting to know her. Ryan, the cast of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was very un-Tarantino-like, with a mixture of up-and-coming stars and extremely familiar faces, including Al Pacino. But did you miss the Keitels, the Ross, the Sam Jacksons from the previous films?
Not really, to be honest. I think there are some heavy hitters in this movie. And again, great performances all around. And it didn't feel like a standard Tarantino film. Like, it had a lot of the, your normal elements. It was kind of very dialogue heavy, kind of whimsical at times, sharp, but maybe a little self-indulgent, a little longer. But I never felt like, okay, we needed those kind of regulars in the movie, especially not for this and the story that it was trying to tell. I think we got some heavy hitters, some great performances. So yeah, no, I didn't really miss that.
How about you, IG? Do you feel that the Ross, Keitels, and Jacksons would have clogged up the works and made it less believable for the time frame?
I do. I think that, we had some people there, right? Michael Madsen was there. Kurt Russell was there. So we had people that have been in other things, and then Brad Pitt from Inglourious Bastards. So he brought in some of the familiar faces that are part of his universe. So and even the lady that was breaking up the fight between Bruce Lee and Cliff, she was in Death Proof, right? Among other things. She's been in a bunch of the Tarantino stuff, and she was in Django too. Yeah, she was a stunt woman before all that. So we get a lot of familiar faces that kind of remind you that this is a Tarantino project, especially when they all end up in the same movie. So I think if you always put Sam Jackson in your movie, it's going to be a problem. Sometimes you got to leave him out just to keep things fresh. So no, I think putting in everybody would have just gummed it up. There was already probably 400 people in this movie, so we needed to tame it down. I mean, granted, half of them were in Bounty Law, but we still had a lot of players in the movie.
If you're a movie fan like I am, and I know most of you are, you wouldn't be listening to this, you would know that the script for Hateful Eight got leaked a long time before it even came out, and the blame fell directly on Tarantino regular, the embodiment of throat cancer, Michael Madsen. Unlike the rest of the Unusual Suspects, Michael made it into the movie, but it was for a total of 10 seconds. Do you think that might have been shots fired at Mr. Madsen?
Oh, yeah. Or at least it was look, fuck up again and you won't even get the 10 seconds. So you need to really show up and fire whoever gave away the script, get more trustworthy people on your team, do something, or you can just not come around anymore. But maybe Michael Madsen's just had enough of it anyway, and he only wanted 10 seconds. That could be true as well.
Well, Kim, from the files of Don't Call Me Pumpkin Puss, one of the things that continues to amaze me is how great child actors are becoming. Juliet Butters steals the show with her scenes with Leo. Were you impressed with the little actress's performance as much as I was?
Wasn't she awesome? I just loved her. I mean, man, we're sitting there and we're watching the movie and I'm thinking, all right, well, here's this super intellectual, youngster who's, wants to be 150,000% on point. She wants to nail her role. Okay, fine. And then it's like you're seeing a double version of him. You're seeing like an inception of the individual acting. They're acting like they're acting. You know what I mean? But they're acting amazing. And she's so young and she did it so well. And like the improvised scene where he throws her to the ground, it's so believable. Like I could have watched a whole hour of her being just a major part of the movie. I just thought I thought she was phenomenal. They couldn't have cast it that better.
Well, the performances seem to get better and better from these young actors and actresses. They're not just annoying side characters anymore. Like she played a big part of keeping Rick Dalton on the rails. And that scene that he nailed, he wanted to impress her. He wanted to go in there and wow the director and wow that little young actress. And I thought that was simply amazing. Yeah, it really did. Like it showed him that this is an art or what you do. And you've got to respect that art and you've got to hone it and you got to become better at it. And I love that dialogue between them. He's like, what are you, 12, kid? And she's like, no, I'm 8. How about you, Ryan? Did you like the performance?
We have gotten some great, really great child performances, and it just seems like, she just seems so mature. And I think part of it is just, her timing, I guess, like her own kind of comic timing was great. And I don't have a lot more to add. I thought she was phenomenal and really added a lot to her scenes with him.
IG can verify this. And I found that odd that Quentin went this way. Instead of Cinik, I almost went with Pumpkin Puss, and it was going to be the Pumpkin Puss radio podcast, but in the last minute, we decided otherwise, only because it'd been used before on other formats, usually porn. Sometimes life has a way of impacting the movies that we love, and a death will certainly impact a film, as we saw one of the last performances of Luke Perry in this film, and Bruce Dern having to step in for the late Burt Reynolds, who was supposed to play the owner of the ranch. IG, is there simply movies that you can't watch now because the actors have passed away?
No, there's movies that I will watch just because the actors have passed away, because I like to remember things that they've done, like all the Star Wars movies with Carrie Fisher. They now have an even deeper meaning when I watch them. So no, I haven't had any that went because the actor's no longer with us that I won't watch, but I could see where some people would do that. But I like to see the life in them. So some of the performances from some of these people are so great that seeing them put on whatever face they're doing in a movie just gives me just a reason to love them all the more. Even though they're gone, they will always be remembered, right? Especially these actors, they're immortalized forever in film.
How about you, Kim? Any side effects from any deaths from popular actors?
No, but with what he was just saying, it just reminded me of Heath Ledger's role when he was in Batman. Like I probably watched it 10 times more than I probably ever would have had he not passed away, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's an interesting example because he peaked right in that role. That was the best of the best for him. So to go out on top of that.
I feel like he went out on top and he left this gift, like he put his everything into this particular role and he just left this gift for all of these viewers to watch, for eternity. It's in history now, that's not going anywhere.
For me, it's always the circumstances of their deaths that usually bother me. And Heath Ledger, not so much. I respect the performance and I like the actor, but I can absolutely not watch a Robin Williams film. I can't. I can't and I won't. And it's kind of become the same way with Soundgarden as well. Whenever I hear Soundgarden, it emotionally impacts me. I mean, the struggle. Now they all have different demons, but it's mostly the struggle with depression and not reaching out for help from people, which was the end of these great actors, actresses, musicians, whatever. And that always impacts me. It always hits really close to home because I know so many people that have lost the struggle with depression. So to see their art and see how great and see how they impacted the world, and then just to have that snuffed out is extremely painful in my eyes. The Manson family was a smaller part of the movie than I would have thought. Charlie shows up for a little bit. Did they kind of project the cult in its creepy glory, especially at that movie ranch?
Yeah, no, I'm not super familiar with it. I probably, I've like anyone, I think I've seen documentaries on it and I've read about it over the years. But it kind of captured everything I thought I knew about it. And they definitely, with the limited time we got from them, I think they really did a good job of showing them as this kind of creepy cult. They played it as a lot of this movie is played for comedy. And I think the brilliant thing about the movie, and I'm assuming it was intentional, is we didn't know much about the movie leading into it. We kind of knew, the trailers kind of show us, okay, you have this fading actor and his stuntman, and then it takes place in the time of the Manson murders. So we kind of and Sharon Tate's in it. So we're left to assume that the Manson murders are in it. And I think one of the interesting things about it is that there's an expectation that this is all going to build to the murder of Sharon Tate. So we kind of, it's almost like when you see an illusion where there's like a picture and you think you see something, but then when you actually, you look at it and it's like, no, your brain is playing tricks. And I feel like my brain was playing a trick where it was creating a narrative of a story leading to, the murder. Meanwhile, we're just kind of passengers in this ride. So, I think in my mind, it played a bigger role than what it really was. And I'd be interested in watching the movie again, knowing where it goes, to see kind of how I feel about how the whole Manson family was into it. Because we have that really long scene in the middle, but otherwise they're really on the periphery, even though, because we know the setting, it's always prevalent, and we're always waiting for, okay, when are they going to take a prominent role in this movie? Because it's got to happen. And it was kind of an interesting thing for me that, like, my brain was creating this narrative that I don't know was actually there.
We get a brief glimpse of Charlie, not a lot, and he's played by a great actor named Damon Herman. And IG, would you have liked to see more of him as Charles Manson?
Yeah, that's one thing I think was missing. I know that this was kind of a retelling in a different path, just like Quentin likes to do. That's one of the pieces that was missing. And I'm going to liken it to like Inglourious Bastards, where we got a little more time with Adolf Hitler and to see what kind of a crazy maniac he was. I think if we would have gotten a little more time with Charlie here and to see what kind of a crazy maniac he is and how he was able to motivate his cult, his followers to do the things that they were doing, I think that would have been beneficial to us as the viewers who were just along for the ride. But on the same vein, I do really think that the mystery behind it, leaving us kind of in the dark, also works. I mean, I would have liked to seen it, but it doesn't necessarily take away.
What's interesting is, like, leading up to the movie, I couldn't fathom how or why Quentin Tarantino, of all directors, would have a movie focused on that. And that was one thing that I was always trying to wrap my head around, was like, it just doesn't make sense. Why would he do a take on the Manson murder? It didn't work. And so obviously, like, as it plays out, it's like, makes perfect sense. But I feel like the whole Sharon Tate story and for the most part, the Manson family was kind of a red herring. It was a brilliantly and strategically placed red herring, but we could have this movie without most of that. And it's effectively the same movie, which is, again, one of the kind of really interesting things about this, and what I want to watch it again to kind of see how I really feel about all of it.
Obviously, you don't ask a question unless you know the answer to it. I know you all wanted to see him play Charlie Manson a little more, and you will. In season 2 of Mindhunter on Netflix, he actually plays Charlie Manson again, which, if you're unfamiliar with Mindhunter, it is a genius show about how the FBI learned to profile serial killers in that time period. So we'll get to see a little bit more of him playing Charles Manson, which I'm extremely excited about. Kim, Cliff's flirtation with a young hitchhiker leads him into the belly of the beast with the cult. Did it look to you like there might be a near miss at the ranch? Did you think old Cliff was done for?
I thought he was done for in the car until he asked her for the ID. He wised up there for a second. When he arrived at the ranch, I mean, kudos to everybody for really just playing that cult-like disposition so well. You know what I mean? I mean, there was that genuine sense of community love, that you have the picture painted of when you think of these kind of scenarios and situations, the holding of the hands, and everybody is, a friend or lover or whatever. There was very little direct name calling. There was pet names, Sunshine and Scarlet and yada, yada. And so I just thought that the entire scene was really well done, but he was drastically outnumbered despite how much of a badass he was. And no matter whose ass he was able to kick, in the actual movie, he's outnumbered, you know. He may know the layout of the land because he had filmed there once before in the past, but it's 50-1, you know. The odds are not in your favor, man. So yeah, I thought he was pretty much going to be done for, but what a ballsy move to continue and just proceed inside the house.
Yeah, that was some cocksure movement right there. He knew that he could handle himself because he was looking around and there was just more and more people coming to the scene. What about you, Ryan? Did you think that Cliff might have met his end? Because all I could see in my head is just waves of cult members running with knives and just attacking him.
To that point, it seemed like the movie was fairly grounded in reality. So I did think, you know, yeah, he's probably done for. And again, you know, I knew enough about the murders to know that, you know, they end up a house away from Rick Dalton. So, you know, I was assuming, you know, okay, maybe he dies or something happens. Yeah, I was expecting for him to be done for and was pleasantly surprised with the way it ended.
There was a great line in that back and forth when they're in the car going there, and he basically said that jail has been trying to get me my whole life, and I'm not going there because of you or some underage poontang. The dialogue in that scene was really great because that was the era there. It's a chargeable offense, and I'm sure most people look the other way. It was free love and everything else. You know, you make that wrong judgment and you could be going to jail. IG, how about you? Do you think you'd pick up some random hippie pussycat to take over to the ranch?
No. Not so much. I don't know. I just, hitchhikers have always kind of freaked me out. And I mean, anytime I see somebody standing on the side of the road with their thumb out or something, I'm like, what the hell is wrong with you? Like if I see a car broken down, I might pull over and ask them if they need something, need gas or something. I might do that because then I have done it. And people have stopped and helped me when I was much younger and stupid and didn't know how to make sure my gas tank was full. But to pick someone up, put them in my vehicle and drive them somewhere. And especially as far as it seemed like he was going to drive this young hippie, that's a no for me. No, I'm not taking somebody that I don't know that could be any level of crazy or be attached to multiple extra levels of crazy. No, I'm not doing that. I saw something about Mary too many times to know that, and 7-minute abs isn't my thing.
Yeah, I agree. Every time I pass a hitchhiker, it's like, oh, that guy would totally murder you if you let him in your car for 3 seconds. I mean, it could be the most clean-cut, normal-looking person. I'd be like, yep, they're totally looking to kill somebody tonight. I don't understand it. It's a different era, and you just can't be doing that. Ryan, much like Inglourious Bastards, Once Upon a Time took a major turn in the third act as our heroes Cliff and Rick were the targets of this infamous encounter with the Manson family rather than Tate and Company up, just a house away. Were you surprised at the change, and did you agree with it?
So yeah, I was surprised. You know, again, I think the brilliant thing about him planting Sharon Tate in it and the Manson family murders is that the entire time we have this expectation of what's going to happen in the third act. No matter what happens in acts 1 and 2, act 3, they've got to murder them, and the whole time, because she's divorced from Dalton for the most part in the story, you're trying to figure out how is this going to connect. So I figured maybe there would be some kind of close call, or they would stumble upon it, or they would meet and hang out, or I just assumed like something would happen, but it would end with her getting murdered brutally. And then you realize pretty early on that, oh wait, I don't think he's going that angle, and then it just goes to hell and chaos and craziness and kind of very much vintage Quentin Tarantino as far as the violence and the chaos and kind of everything turned up to 11 is concerned. And so I like that it went that way, because I don't know that I think it was unexpected. It was subversive, even though kind of in hindsight should have expected it. And, like I said, it created this world where I had no idea that was going to happen. So it was hilarious. It was funny. There were some great scenes. There was some great action when he pulls out the blowtorch. I mean, all of that is just so ridiculous and great that it's far better than watching him dive into what really happened, which is even, worse and more brutal and more horrible. And I don't think we necessarily needed that, because that's been, kind of talked about and ad nauseum. And so, yeah, I like that he goes that route with the movie and gives us this kind of alternate history. And I think it really kind of, again, makes for something that made me think about what, my own expectations versus what I got and what I wanted, what I needed out of the movie. And so I thought it really worked.
I did too. I mean, I know I've told you guys this, but for once I walked out of a movie theater and I was surprised. Like, I didn't see that coming, and I'm glad I didn't get ruined by the internet. I'm glad I couldn't guess the ending. I was shocked by it. I liked it. And although I would have liked to see his take on the event, you're right. It's been done to death. No pun intended. We know what happened. It was terrible. She was pregnant. It was a bad deal. So to see it kind of get turned around, much like in Glorious Bastards, really, it excited me as a moviegoer. And this is where Quentin Tarantino gets it right and other directors don't. What do you think, IG?
I think that's absolutely on point. I'm hoping that anybody that comes and listens to this episode of the podcast has actually seen the movie and can not get spoiled, because if we're spoiling this for you, I'm completely sorry. But this is just like Inglourious Bastards where we went. This is just like Inglourious Bastards where we went a completely different direction and changed history in a different universe. So maybe this is proof of a multiverse or something, but I was completely surprised because I was watching Sharon Tate through this whole movie thinking, oh shit, she's going to get killed while she's pregnant, and it's going to be bad and it's going to be brutal. And then I saw the craziness out at the ranch and I'm like, yep, they're really going to do it. And then it went a completely different direction, and it was amazing and fun to watch, and just the craziest fight scenes I've seen in a long time. And Quentin Tarantino's done some amazing fight scenes. And like I said earlier, Kill Bill Volume 1 has that fight scene with the Crazy 88 that is just one of the best things of all time, and this is right up there with it. And I think that it really just is a testament to Quentin and what he's able to do with his filmmaking style, that he can take some things like this, change history, and make something completely different, and we're all still enamored and want to watch it. So, yeah, I'm glad they did what they did. I'm happy that he took a different direction, and Sharon Tate got to live on in this universe, and really justice was served.
So, Kim, you just happen to have a flamethrower lying around in your tool shed. Is that the first thing you're running for when all this stuff is going down?
Well, yeah, because he obviously doesn't know how to fight his own fights. He's had somebody else do it for him his whole life, basically. So, grab for what you can. Also, I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to remove movie props from the set. So
they all do.
I'm surprised that surprised that didn't come up during a police investigation or whatever. But I thought that was really cool. Although the lady was in water. And he's blowing fire at her, and I'm like, bitch, duck, go underwater, just go down a foot, you'll be fine. So that I was, it's a little comedic relief or whatever, because it was just very much over the top. It was strange to me that, there was just this small collective group of people that ended up being the kills of the movie. And I think for me, when I step in and I'm watching a Quentin Tarantino movie, I'm going because I know that there's going to be a lot of gore. I know that there's going to be a lot of bloodshed and some wild, chicken guts being thrown at the camera or whatever. And for that to not happen until almost the very end of a movie for me was like, I was bored. Even though the movie was chill and, but that middle section just, for me, it felt like it dragged on forever.
Ryan, I've heard some complaints on the internet, because they love to complain, that the change was disrespectful to the victims of such a tragic event. Agree or disagree?
I disagree, because I don't, again, what happens in this case is on the periphery. It's not him retelling that story. And so I think that's really, really important. I think the story, focuses on, I've read a lot of criticisms of the movie too. Some I can understand, but I don't, I think it's not disrespectful, because I don't think it's not the story. He's not telling that. He's not saying this is the story of, it's something that happens on the periphery. And like I said, I think it's really, if anything, you could kind of argue that maybe it's disrespectful because it was used kind of as a red herring. She's not really well developed. I thought her performance was great with what she was given, but the character is not well developed, and considering kind of the tragedy that happens, we get very little of her, and she really is used as an instrument to kind of for misdirection more than anything. But regardless, like, it's his story, and he's not purporting to tell that story. It's not a biography, so I don't get that complaint about the movie. I don't think I don't see it as being disrespectful. It is what it is. It's his movie. He can do what he wants. And again, he's not claiming to tell a story about this character that is true to life or accurate.
It's really stories about Rick Dalton and Cliff Booth, and they're fictional characters completely. So get over it, people that are mad about something, that this is a complete act of fiction. The moment we all realize the whole movie is a complete act of fiction, and that it's about people that never existed, the easier you'll be with this.
Yeah, people really need to calm down. He's not denying the Holocaust. I mean, it was the change to a murder story that actually worked out to the benefit of the victims. How could that be wrong? You know, in a better world, maybe they would have lived. IG, the events of the ill-fated home invasion were gory, horrific, and hilarious. A classic Tarantino overkill. What was the reaction to the theater that you saw it in?
There was laughter and a couple of holy shits going on, like out loud, very loud. It was an amazing thing to watch in a theater full of people, and it was probably about half full. It wasn't a completely full theater when I saw it, but it like a lot of like, oh wow, that kind of stuff going on, and I just really was doing it myself too. Like when that started going on, I ended up sitting at the edge of my seat, just like intently staring, trying not to blink. Because in a Tarantino movie, especially, if you blink, you miss something, and you better watch it 6 more times. And I plan on watching this 6 more times. Now, it's not even in my top 3 favorite Tarantino movies, but it is still a Tarantino movie, and there isn't one that I won't watch whenever it's on.
It happened so fast, and it was so over the top. And part of it, I was just sitting there waiting, like, okay, maybe they're going to run away, and we're still going to get back on track. This is still going to happen. And it just kept going and going and going. And the gas turned to holy shits, turned to laughter because it was so over the top. It was cringe-inducing violence, but you just couldn't look away. And I frankly couldn't stop laughing. What do you think, Ryan?
Well, the crowd, I think similar, was like kind of a holy shit, like unexpected. And I think again, that was one of the more brilliant parts of the movie. And often like you'll forget about if it's kind of boring in the middle or if it drags, if it really ends as a shock. I think, it's nothing like this, but I think back to like, you guys remember the movie The Ring. And that movie up until that final scene or that the big scene it's a fairly by the numbers horror movie, but because of that scene, I'll always think of it as one of the greatest moments kind of in horror history. And, so by kind of pulling the rug out from under us and completely subverting our expectations, but in such a Tarantino way, it really, to me, it worked brilliantly. It was just it's just batshit crazy, but in like the best kind of way. And I loved it. I thought it worked really well. It was hilarious and brutal. And again, there was this sense of impending doom the entire movie. And so to see that not happen, there was a bit of relief as well, I think, from everybody. You kind of feel this collective like, oh, I see where this is going. We're not going to get the brutal murder of 4 people and a pregnant woman. Okay, good, cool. We're going to get crazy over the top violence, blowtorches, dogs biting people's nuts off and forearms, but not what really happened. Great. And so there was a sense of relief and just fun, a great time to be had by all.
Well, Kim, we can agree that we're all animal lovers, right? But let's take a minute to revel in the glory that is Brandy the Pit Bull. I mean, that breed has a stigma attached to it, but that dog was the MVP of the 3rd act. And would you adopt her in a second if she was available?
I mean, she's really, really well trained. Yeah, sure. I mean, just give her a little command and all of a sudden she's taking out people that you don't even like. Sure, what the hell? I think the only thing that really truly bothered me about the entire fight sequence or the death sequence there was that it wasn't the ball biting. It wasn't the over exaggerated running around of the charcoal briquette lady, or anything like that. It was almost a 3-hour movie and we got 9 minutes of Quentin Tarantino. That's what bothered me, I think, the most.
You're talking about the action, the violence, the gore. We only got about 9 minutes of it.
Yeah.
It might not even been that. I mean, for me, Brandy was definitely the MVP of the 3rd act. However, a close second is the Manson family member that got in the car and drove away and left the other 3 of them there.
Peace.
That is such an IG move. I forgot my knife in the car. Give me the keys.
I'll be right back.
IG, would you pull something like that if you didn't agree with the way that this was headed?
Yeah, it looked kind of like a bad plan, If you knew anything about where you're going in and what you're going to deal with, like maybe the problem the Manson family had in this universe is they didn't have Google. So they couldn't find out that, this guy may or may not have killed his wife and may or may not be one of the baddest men on the planet. And if you know that going in, are you still going to go in to him and his amazingly well-trained circus dog to go in and try and do anything to him, or are you going to just go and get a burger down the road? And that's the problem, is that they're doing these things. So yeah, if I smell one hint of anything, I'm leaving, and you guys can go in. I'll be over here later. I'll be alive. You'll all be dead.
I'm going to meet you guys at the In-N-Out Burger afterwards, and thanks.
I think one of the most underrated things of the third act was Brad Pitt acting high on acid. How believable.
Hilarious, too. I love the line that the train has left the station. I also love the dog food in the movie. They had rat flavor and raccoon flavor.
So
It was
gross.
so fucking great. And I love the fact that he licked it when he was high as well. It's like,
It reminded me, him dumping the food off, like that. It reminded me of that opening sequence in Back to the Future 1, and Doc Brown's machine is all set up and it's running on its own and it's feeding Copernicus or whatever his dog was named at that time. He flips the dog food can over and it just like splats down onto the bowl, and that's the first thing that rolled through my mind when I saw that dog food. But then I saw rat flavor and I was like,
Ryan George, our very own Cliff Booth of the podcast, sans the wife killing. In the end, it was a happy ending for everyone except for the fucking hippies. Cliff was injured, but okay. Rick Dalton was alive and he got to meet his neighbors, and the Mansons were thoroughly dealt with. Your final thoughts on the movie and your rating?
So I feel like this is a movie I'm going to have to watch a few more times to really figure out how much I like it or not. I really enjoyed the experience. I thought it was, again, I think the performances were great. I really thought Brad Pitt was great. Leonardo DiCaprio, who's a great actor, but not my favorite, was excellent in this, and probably maybe my favorite role of his. I think Margot Robbie was great with what she was given, which wasn't given much. But again, just all down the line, I think we had really great performances. And like I said, I think that by planting that seed of the Manson family murders, I was kind of I had that expectation. So I didn't consider that this was just really us experiencing their lives, and this kind of, this washed up actor and, him kind of trying for one last try. And, I know there's a lot of themes here dealing with kind of old Hollywood and new Hollywood, and a lot of stuff that maybe, that definitely goes over my head. I enjoyed it for the ride that it was. I think it really, it was definitely, it didn't have some of the irreverence of some other Quentin Tarantino movies, but it very much felt like a Quentin Tarantino movie. It was very dialogue heavy, again, very sharp with the dialogue, and just really brought out great performances from the actors, where even though it was mostly 3 hours of just talking, I could sit there and just watch it. Like I could watch Dalton and what's Pitt's character, Booth. I could just watch them talk all day long. It's like it was just really enjoyable, and again, great performances. I could have sat through another couple hours of the movie, even though it was long. And I did love the twist at the end, and I think it worked really, really well. So again, I don't know how rewatchable it is, but I can't wait to see it again. Out of the theater, I would give it an 8. It's really good. I think it's up there with some of his better movies, and I might go up a little bit, maybe go down a little bit, but I really enjoyed it, and I think it was maybe his most mature movie, if that if that's possible. And again, I love that it did turn and go into batshit crazy Quentin Tarantino violence at the end to give us a little taste of that. But I thought, again, enjoyed it. I loved the ride, and I like how it subverted our expectations.
When we left the theater, I felt void of thought. Like I didn't quite know how to interpret it. Fairly vague, until I got home and started thinking about it a little bit more and started remembering some of the little innuendos and the little hidden jokes and little plot twists that were added in. And it made me appreciate the movie all that much more for how much thought actually went into it. There was just so much to it. And, over the course of a almost 3 hour time span, if you're only seeing it one time, it's not enough for you to fully appreciate it. And I feel like this is a film where this is going to be more of a cult classic the longer it's out there and the longer that people have an opportunity to enjoy it or repeat watch it. So for me, taking everything into consideration, I thought it was fabulous. it's great for me. If this was a 1 out of 10, I'm giving it a strong 9.5. I thought it was wonderful, and I definitely want to see it again. And it's totally something I would end up buying as soon as it comes out and adding it to my QT collection.
So from the beginning to the end, I really enjoyed this quite a bit. Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio were amazing in their roles, and really all the way down the list. I mean, even Kevin Smith's daughter, Harley Quinn, like as one of the hippies, did well. Everybody in this had the best brought out of them, and that's a true testament to what Quentin is able to do with his actors, because that's something that he's been able to do since he really kind of hit the limelight. Reservoir Dogs really just got amazing performances out of people that were not known for that kind of thing. And then he resurrected careers with Pulp Fiction. And no one in this is going to get a resurrection of their career, because most of the people already have very good careers or have had very good careers, because Al Pacino hasn't done much in the last few years. So it was good to see him in this. But he was amazing. Everybody in this was really well done. There were some things that drug a little bit in it for me, though. Like you said a number of times in the podcast today, the bounty law stuff was a little bit long, a little bit unnecessary. But I think it helped. I think it helped kind of really set mood and timing and everything with it. So I think if you take it out, the movie's not going to be what it is. So I really do like it. I think that it's beautifully shot. It's acted so well. And the dialogue in it is just really, really good. The twist at the end, I didn't see coming. And the action, even though there was only a little bit of it, I really did like it. So I'm going to give the movie an 8.5. I really enjoyed it. It's not my favorite, as I said earlier, but it's still a very good Quentin Tarantino movie.
I can go on about this movie for hours. This really was a love letter to the era, and it worked. I mean, the attention to detail in this movie, from the dog food to the food products, to the vending machines, to the cars, to the signs along the road, everything just screamed that era, and I absolutely enjoyed it. I don't like music from that time period. I loved this soundtrack, but let's face it, parts of his career could have been shorter. We could have spent that time with Tate and friends. We could have spent that time with the Mansons, even though they, as Ryan put it, they were the red herring. I would have liked to see that area of the movie get developed a little bit more than the 30th time hearing Bounty Law and the NBC logo go off. But I was invested in Rick. I wanted to see his career. I wanted to on the upward trajectory. I wanted to see him on top again. I wanted him and Cliff to remain as a team. I was actually excited that Sharon Tate lived. I mean, at least in the context of this movie, she seemed like an absolute lovely woman, and just spot on acting from everybody in the cast, from DiCaprio to Pitt. Tarantino movies, they're not just movies. They're experiences. They're like Scorsese movies. Everybody brings their A game when they get involved in something like this. And for a movie buff like me, it's Christmas, it's New Year's, it's my birthday, all rolled into one. And I sincerely hope that everyone gets to see this movie and experience it without it being ruined on the internet, because the plot twist, once it's revealed, is just crazy. And if they ruin it online, they should all go to hell. Just about everything in this movie worked for me. I was impressed with how they recreated the era. It's just a masterpiece. It just worked. I would have liked to see Quentin's take on the actual events. I was happy that the heroes saved the day. Sometimes all you need is a can of dog food, man's best friend, and a blowtorch, and you can change history. I give Once Upon a Time in Hollywood a 9.5.
And that's it. You made it to the end of another episode of the Cinik Radio podcast. I'm Igrihe, here with Cinik, who you can find at CINIKRADIO.com. Also, we had Ryan, who you can find at thejimwits.com, and Kim, who you can find at KMCArtworks.com. Great artists. Go check out some really cool stuff. We'll be back next week with some new stuff for you, probably some news as well. Send your crazy news stories, any comments, questions, and concerns to us at CINIKRADIO@gmail.com. Find us on the internet at CINIKRADIO.com. Look for us on Facebook at Facebook.com/CINIKRADIO. Find us on Twitter at CINIKRADIO. And find us on Instagram at CINIKRADIO. You can also head over to tpublic.com, search for Cinik, CINIK, and get your own Cinik Radio podcast gear. T-shirts, mugs, cups, stickers, all the cool Cinik Radio podcast stuff you could possibly want. It'd help the show, and we would greatly appreciate it. Thanks again for all the love and support. Keep listening, sharing it with your friends, like, listen, and subscribe. And until next time, don't get captured.
Follow the podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and at CINIKRADIO.com. Available for download on iTunes.